Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News, TV, radio and online, of course. It is the second day of nurses' industrial action across England, and in Wales, the ambulance service is carrying out a 24-hour strike. I'm going to be talking to the Chief Executive of the Welsh Ambulance Service to see what can be done to avert another one next week. And away from strikes, do you remember the fuss around the Blythe-based gigafactory in Northumberland? It was going to be the heart of UK battery production for electric cars. Well, it's gone into administration. Our business and economics editor, Liam Halligan, will be at the site this morning for us to explain what happened and how big a blow this is to the electric car movement. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news with Rhiannon.
Bev, thank you. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. The government's announced more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK through a Levelling Up fund. The Prime Minister's promised to deliver economic growth and new jobs. £19 million of the latest round of funding will be going to Richmond and Yorkshire, Rishi Sunak's own constituency. The Eden Project North in Morecambe will receive £50 million, as will Cardiff Crossrail. Labour's criticised the plan, saying London and South East England will receive most of the money. But Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove says they're wrong.
The way in which the money is allocated is against objective criteria. So we set out our determination to make sure that people in those overlooked communities get support. Then the allocation is scrutinised by experts in government departments in order to make sure that it's rigorous. But as I say, you know, the biggest investment of all is in Morecambe and across Lancashire. We're seeing investment, including in communities like Blackburn and Accrington that I mentioned, and that is a deliberate way in which this government is doing more to support these communities.
Health leaders are making contingency plans for what could be the biggest walkout in the history of the NHS next month. It was announced yesterday that ambulance workers will join nurses in a combined day of action for the first time ever on February the 6th. Nurses in England from 55 NHS trusts are today staging a second day of strike action, while more than 1,000 Unite members in the Welsh Ambulance Service are holding the first of two 24-hour walkouts. Ferry services between Dover and Calais have been suspended today due to a national strike in France. P&O Ferries says it's produced an optimised sailing schedule in light of the 24-hour walkout. The Port of Dover says it's still open with services to Dunkirk running as normal, but has advised travellers to allow extra time for journeys. Ferries to Calais are expected to resume at 2 this afternoon. The King has requested the profits from a £1 billion a year wind farm deal to be used for the wider public good, rather than the royal family. King Charles has asked for the profits from 6 new offshore wind farms being developed on Crown Estate land to be redirected to those struggling the most. It comes after His Majesty highlighted the anxiety and hardship of the cost of living crisis in his Christmas message. Jacinda Ardern is quitting as Prime Minister of New Zealand next month, saying she no longer has enough in the tank to lead the country. She'll step down as Labour Party leader by the 7th of February, with a vote to determine her replacement shortly after. New Zealand will hold a general election on the 14th of October. Ms Ardern admitted it had been a tough 5.5 years in the job.
This has been the most fulfilling 5.5 years of my life. But it has also had its challenges. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple.
Officials in New Mexico are expected to announce if actor Alec Baldwin will face criminal charges over the fatal shooting of a cinematographer last year. Helena Hutchins was killed and director Joel Souza injured on the set of the film Rust when a gun Baldwin was using during a rehearsal fired a live bullet. Baldwin has said he was told the gun was safe to use and that he didn't pull the trigger. He sued crew members for negligence. Universities have seen a 22% increase in antisemitism over the past 2 academic years. The Community Security Trust says it's received 150 reports of incidents affecting Jewish students, academics and university staff. That's up from 123 reported in the previous 2 academic years. It comes after an investigation last week revealed Jewish undergraduates face a hostile culture within the National Union of Students. And Manchester Airport has reopened after temporarily closing both runways this morning due to heavy snow. The Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings of snow and ice for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales as bitterly cold temperatures continue to grip the UK. Meanwhile, an ice warning's in place for southwest England, with a major incident declared in Somerset due to the risk of flooding. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. It's back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News, on TV, radio and online. Here's what's coming up on the show this morning. Patients face unprecedented disruption in the health service next month, with ambulance and nursing staff staging joint walkouts. It comes as thousands of nurses begin a second consecutive day of strike action. And Welsh Ambulance Service staff are on a 24-hour strike today, and I'll be speaking to their chief executive in just a moment. The Unite union says that ambulance workers will join 23 picket lines across Wales in their fight to prevent the Welsh NHS from collapse, ahead of another strike on January the 23rd. And joining me on my panel this morning to tackle the big news of the day, including Jacinda Ardern's resignation as New Zealand's Prime Minister and Michael Gove's Levelling Up Fund, I'll be joined by the political commentator Matthew Stadlen and co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. And of course, this show is vastly improved with your input. We've got a poll running this morning. And I'm asking you that as the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove, announces £2 billion of money for projects across the country, do you think this will improve your quality of life? Because surely that is the point of these handouts, effectively. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews to have your say. When I talk to my panel a bit about this Levelling Up Fund, I will give you some of the figures which are being spent in some areas and what they're being attributed to. A lot of cycle lanes. A lot of cycle lanes. I'm not sure whether that will improve your quality of life, but maybe it will. If you're a cyclist, it definitely will. Now, another day, another set of strikes. Yesterday, when I asked you at home if you support the nurses' strike, almost 60% of you did, whereas last month, only 30% of you supported the strikes on our Twitter polls. So politically, though, the battle continues. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer clashed over the ongoing NHS strikes during yesterday's PMQ, specifically ambulance wait times. This follows 2 walkouts last month. Patients could again face disruption to operations and appointments, though nurses are to continue providing emergency care. Our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, is in Lancashire. Good morning, Sophie. I believe you're at Wiston Hospital this morning. What are you hearing there?
Good morning to you. Yes, at Wiston Hospital in Merseyside today. Yesterday they had around 200 nurses taking to the picket line, and now the sun has finally come out. We're expecting a similar turnout today. So joining me now is an ICU nurse. Tell me a little bit about your experience so far.
So I'm newly qualified, qualified in September. I look after some of the most poorest people that in the hospital. And we're massively understaffed. This is about working conditions. The people we work with as a massive multidisciplinary team. It's not just us. People are stressed, you're having constant conversations about, do we have enough staff? Can someone cover this shift? Can we do this? And the people that are suffering are the patients. These patients deserve the best care that we possibly can give, and that's what we want to do, and unfortunately we're not able to always do that.
You mentioned that you're newly qualified. There's a lot of reports that nurses who are in training, they will then not go on to actually take a job within nursing. What made you want to give it a go and take a job in nursing?
I think the choice of where I chose to work, intensive care there's a lot more staff than there is on the wards. It also comes with a lot more responsibility. But I think the only way that we can move forward is by keep going with the NHS, keep fighting, keep trying. If we all just decide now to go and work, we could go and all work for an agency and get paid £50 an hour. But we're so lucky to have an NHS that we need the staff to keep it going.
And tell me, it's going back and forth now between the government and the RCN union. What needs to happen to make these strikes stop?
They need to actually sit down and talk to us, listen, not threaten to stop us from striking altogether. That just shows really what kind of viewpoint that the government are having. The only way I can see out of it is a new government, someone that actually is going to listen to us. Make it safe for patients.
Great. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Megan. We can hear that there's plenty of support for the nurses. We can hear, as we've just been talking there, all morning, everyone driving past, constantly beeping, and we're going to be bringing you updates from Wiston Hospital as the day goes on.
Thank you, Sophie. Good job, Sophie Reaper there. Now, the Welsh Ambulance Service start its 24-hour strike today in a pay dispute, and another walkout is scheduled for Monday. Joining me now is Jason Killens, the Chief Executive of the Welsh Ambulance Service. Good morning, Jason. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning. Right, just give us your position. Why do your ambulance workers feel the need to strike?
Well, look, so we've got the first day of action by Unite the Union today, and as you say, a further day on Monday. That follows 2 days of industrial action in the last couple of weeks by GMB here in Wales and obviously across the rest of the ambulance sector in the UK too. The staff I've been talking to in the last few weeks are saying to me that, they joined the ambulance service like I did to help people, to provide great care to patients when they need us most. And in the choices that our staff are making, our people are making, they feel deeply conflicted because on the one hand, they joined to provide that great care to patients when they need it most. But on the other, they feel that they can't currently do that because of the pressure across health and social care. And they feel that the time is now right for them to make their stance, their point with their unions about the pressure and the working conditions which they are currently enduring. But of course, the dispute arises out of one of pay, which is with government, not with me or with us as the employer. But of course, these issues, these workplace issues, are very much in the minds of our clinicians and our control room staff in the choices they're making.
So do you very much feel that these employees, these workers, these beloved part of our country, our community, we rely on these workers enormously, that they feel that they genuinely have no option, that they've thought long and hard about this and it's not been an easy decision to make, but we really have hit the precipice now and something has to be done?
Well, look, there's no doubt in the staff that I've been talking to in the last few weeks that many of them feel now that the pressure is such that they can't do the job that they joined for. They can't provide the great care that they want to offer to patients when they call us, when they need us most. Often our paramedics and emergency medical technicians, are seeing one or two patients in a 12-hour shift now, where, of course, pre-pandemic and prior to the pressure being at the extent it is, that was 6, 8 or 10 patients a shift. They're concerned about the impact on patients and patient safety. And of course, we do know that some patients, sadly, are coming to avoidable harm as a result of the delays that are occurring. Now, it's a complex picture. Delays at the emergency department happen, which hold our crews there and prohibit us from responding in the community. Those delays happen because of flow through the hospital not being as efficient as it should be, and that's because there are many patients in beds that are medically fit for discharge that could be in communities but can't be because of pressure in adult social care. So this is a kind of multi-sector issue, but our ambulance staff, certainly our ambulance workers, paramedics, call centre staff and others do feel very strongly now that they think they need to make the point to government and others that the pressure is such, their working conditions are such that they feel they need to take strike action.
Jason, how bad was it before the COVID disruption, and how much of an impact has that had on the service that can be provided now?
Well, look, I mean, COVID is certainly an issue, and it does remain with us. I mean, if I just give you two examples. So in December, just gone, we lost 32,000 hours of emergency ambulance capacity here in Wales. So that it was about 38% of the entire fleet for the month unavailable to us. In 2018, so well before the pandemic, that was just about 6,000 hours a month. So these are the emergency department delays and the impact it has on our fleet nationally and our ability to respond. So there is no doubt that things are worse now after the pandemic than they were before we went into the pandemic. But the pressure that we've got now is not solely as a result of the pandemic and COVID.
We're seeing lots of stories in the media, actually. I interviewed one lady earlier this week. Terribly sad. Leslie Weekly was her name, and her husband, Rob, lost his life because they were waiting for an ambulance for 90 minutes and he couldn't be saved. She isn't a one-off. We're seeing these in the press every day now. Do you think that's going to lose support from the public? We're scared, actually, to be frank. We're very scared that something's going to happen to us or our loved ones.
Well, look, firstly, I need to apologise to all the patients here in Wales that have waited longer than we would like for their emergency ambulance. I see many of those cases personally in terms of the concerns and the complaints that are raised. So I am aware of the impact of these delays. It's clearly not the service that we want to be providing, and it's not the service that our clinicians and all of our staff want to be providing either. The delays occur because of pressure around us. Now, here in the Welsh Ambulance Service, we've invested heavily over the last 3 years, grown the organisation in patient-facing roles by about 400 posts. We've changed our roster system and made other efficiencies, so we're working as efficiently and effectively as we can. But as fast as we're creating those efficiencies and that extra capacity, it's being lost at the emergency department because of the pressure around us. So I think these delays are here for a little while yet, because these are complex issues that the whole system, health and social care system, does need to work together on to fix with support of government. But in the meantime, we will always prioritise our response to the sickest patients first, and those that are immediately life-threatened will always get a response from us.
OK. Really appreciate your time this morning. Chief Executive of the Welsh Ambulance Service, Jason Killen's there. Thank you for joining us. It's interesting, isn't it, when he's talking like that, it's a bigger problem. He's saying it's not just the ambulances, it's not just the paramedics, it's the elderly social care, it's the beds that can't be released. It's a multifaceted issue that needs addressing. Don't forget, we've got a Twitter poll running this morning. Michael Gove has been doing the rounds, Secretary of State for Levelling Up. He was on Breakfast this morning. I'm going to play you that in just a little while when my panel is here, because he's announced a £2 billion for levelling up across the country. Do you think it's going to improve your quality of life? Cast your vote now. And don't forget to drop me an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, after the break, Jacinda Ardern has announced that she will quit as Prime Minister of New Zealand next month, saying she hasn't got enough in the tank to lead the country anymore. Political commentator Matt Stadlen and co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller, will be here to give us their thoughts. Now, though, quick weather update.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. It will turn a little milder as we go through the weekend, but it's cold out there again today. Many places dry and bright with sunny spells, but we will continue to see some snow in places. Seen some heavy snow, particularly in Manchester this morning, and some snow from this area of low pressure heading its way across northern Scotland. A mixture here at low levels of rain, sleet. It's over the hills where we'll continue to see some snowfall coming in, and a mixture of sleet and snow showers over northwest England, North Wales, and one or two moving into parts of the Midlands perhaps as well. But for many areas, it is dry and bright with sunny spells, but it is rather chilly. Temperatures 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, maybe 6 or 7 across the southwest. Feeling colder with the winds across northern Scotland. Further sleet and snow showers coming in here overnight, and it could turn icy wherever we've had showers or wherever we've had the snow through this morning. So just bear that in mind overnight. Slippery conditions again for Friday morning, even though most places won't be seeing any more snow showers through the night. Could turn foggy, especially so in Northern Ireland. It'll certainly turn frosty yet again. So a cold start to Friday, but by and large, Friday is a dry, sunny day for the vast majority. Some stubborn fog patches for Northern Ireland. A few showers grazing easternmost parts of England and eastern Scotland. Again, will be a mixture of rain, sleet, snow and perhaps hail, but say most places just dry and sunny. Temperatures just a degree or so higher, closer to average with light winds in the sunny spells. Not feeling too bad, but again, temperatures will drop pretty sharply on Friday evening. If you're heading out, it's going to be a cold and frosty one, but signs of a change behind me. The cloud thickening, some wet weather moving in. That is a weather front that will slowly introduce milder air this weekend, and I do mean slowly. Still pretty cold for most, but gradually turning milder across the north with some rain in western Scotland. Goodbye.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Very good morning, it's 10:23. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Right, you've been getting in touch. Remember, gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. Let's have a look at a few. On the series of strikes, David has said, people are using ambulances as a taxi service to hospitals. If they had to make their own way there, they often wouldn't bother. Frank has said, stopping the unnecessary requirement that nurses be educated to degree level will boost recruitment hugely. I think that's probably true. And Sandra says, I'm a retired nurse, been there and done that. Nurses should work to rule, not go on strike. Keep your messages coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, my panel are here this morning. I'm delighted to be joined. I'm in the mood for a row, and who better to row with than writer and broadcaster Matt Stadlen and founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. Right, let's start with ambulance strikes. We go back a long way, Matt, don't we? We'll be fine.
I've been called up off the subs bench. I was at the football last night at Selhurst Park. I got the late call up.
Somebody did drop out. He's not wrong, but I'm very happy to see you. I want to hear all about your new baby. Now, the GMB union announced 6 further dates for action. Strikes, Alan Miller. I'd love you to come on this show one week and us not talk about strikes. What's going to end it all?
Well, I think that you have to have proper negotiations. They should be happening speedily. There needs to be... the strikes have to be understood in the context of everything, of investment in infrastructure, of efficiency, of having a proper productivity plan, and also the fact that staff need to be paid properly, and that's all part of productivity. I'm a little concerned that it's done piecemeal, that on the one hand, there's like these intermittent, like disrupting strikes that don't win, they're not really an attempt to win over the public, although there is public sympathy for staff and pay. And at the same time, there isn't a kind of discussion with the public about what needs to happen for transport infrastructure in the UK.
Yeah.
In fact, in other areas of the news, it's been noted by the CBI and many others that that Britain's productivity plan is sort of kind of non-existent. And James Dyson was talking about the fact that, Sunak's government hasn't got a grip on this, and our kind of sluggishness that's been endemic for quite some time, on top of everything that happened in the last 3 years with restrictions and lockdowns, has put us in a perilous situation. So we need to get on. People do need to be paid well. I think we can have wealth creation for all, but you've got to have a robust plan for that.
Matt, I was chatting to an ICU doctor yesterday about the strikes, and he's at the coalface of the most poorly in our society. And he said that a big part that's missing from this debate, all about the NHS and how we fix it, is personal responsibility for our own health. He was saying, when the NHS was started, it was meant to only be kind of a temporary, post-war, get everyone fit again. And yet, in the last 30 years, we've been in an obesity pandemic, we've got non-communicable diseases, lifestyle illness, putting us all in hospital. Do you think it's time that we all started really thinking about the personal responsibility of looking after the NHS?
Yeah, I can't find any fault who could with the idea of personal responsibility. We've all got to do our bit, and we'll live happier and longer lives if we do. The thing is, if we do live longer lives, there's still going to be a strain on the NHS, because part of the problem, as I understand it, and I've been talking to doctors recently too for my podcast, part of the problem is that we are living older as a society. So we've got huge numbers of people who are over 50 in this country. We haven't got that many people who are under 50, and it's largely the under 50s who are providing the money for the public services for those who are over 50. I mean, really over 60, over 70, and so forth. I think we need to invest more in the NHS, which is an incredibly painful and difficult thing to say because we are very heavily taxed at the moment. But medicine has become more expensive. People are surviving for longer. And therefore, although you could argue that funding in one sense has gone up under the last 13 years of Tory rule, actually, in reality, it hasn't, because it's not keeping pace with demand.
And it's true that, Alan, isn't it, in that we've got this ageing population. As you heard Jason Killens there, the Chief Executive of the Welsh Ambulance Service, saying the problem is that the social care end of our service is absolutely not fit for purpose at the moment, and therefore you've got this awful term bed blocking. I don't like that term because nobody's there willingly. They're not deliberately blocking a space for somebody else, but that's on its knees, isn't it?
It is. Well, we've got a combination of things. We've had lots of beds lost over the last 15 years. We've got a staffing issue throughout the NHS. We've got a bloated bureaucracy in the NHS with too many consultants at the top getting too much money. But we've also got a real problem, as you say, in social care. 165,000 missing staff, 40,000 of which were lost as a consequence of an unnecessary and very draconian vaccine mandate where people had been working for a year already on the front line, didn't need it. They should be brought back in, apologised to, compensated and reinstated. A lot of them had a long service diligence. But, you know, we need to get to grips with it. And I think the thing is that it's seen somehow as a kind of almost like an iconoclastic religious institution, the NHS, and it should be there to deal with us efficiently with care. And it's the largest employer in the world. We need to get to grips with efficiency and, like, really, like with productivity, work out ways that staff can be supported and execute and do the good job they do, and really make it much more efficient at the top. It's very bloated and bureaucratic.
Yeah, and I think what this doctor was saying yesterday about this push for health, like preventing people ending up in hospital in the first place, is something that I think has been largely neglected from that conversation for the last couple of decades. Right, you woke up this morning to the news that Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, had resigned. Were you surprised? Or said she's going to step down? Were you a fan of hers, Matt? Are you a fan of hers?
I can't say I was either expecting it or not. I mean, I don't go to bed at night thinking about Jacinda.
Do you know, I genuinely do sometimes. But I did. I woke up and it was the first thing I saw in my cup of tea this morning. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
I'm not an expert in New Zealand politics, but she has divided, polarised opinion, hasn't she? Because of the way that she handled New Zealand's response to the pandemic. And so a lot of people don't like her, and a lot of people do like her. From what I've seen of her press conferences, I think she comes across as empathetic, but strong at the same time. I think she was the youngest world leader at the time. I think she was only the second woman ever, perhaps after Benazir Bhutto, to be a leader of her country and give birth. So I think she's done a lot for women around the world, a lot in the sense of representation. And would I say I'm a fan of her? I think I'd need to know more about New Zealand politics to make that judgment. But certainly the leader of the opposition paid generous tribute to what she's done in service for her country.
Yeah, Alan, I used to love her. I used to think she was amazing for all of the reasons you've just cited, Matt. I was like, wow, there's a woman's had a baby and she's Prime Minister and she's showing that women can have it all. Then lockdowns happened and she had the most draconian, totally lacking in empathy, the restrictions she put around that country. I remember people crying, on the media, on their phones, saying, "I can't. My mother is dying. I need to get back to New Zealand, and I can't go." It was nearly 2 years.
Yeah, it was very long. It was in January 2020 when they had 4 cases. They put Auckland into lockdown. The lockdowns were very brutal. Not even takeaway food. The restrictions were immense. The police treatment of the public, and we should remember that Jacinda Ardern celebrated the idea of having a 2-tier society, saying that those that were not vaccinated would not be able to participate in society, and did it gleefully.
She said it with that really chilling smile on her face all the time. I found it so sinister.
Yeah. And so the thing is that we also know that lockdowns, not only do they not work, but they make things much worse. And the zero COVID strategy has been an utter failure. And, it begs that we need to really revisit the question of pandemic preparedness strategy and not to have unprecedented damaging lockdowns, which we're all dealing with the consequences of now. We've been talking about the NHS, the economy, you think about children, health, a range of areas. And I'm not into identity politics, so it's great. I'm much more interested in what someone's actually doing, and I think that it's been very devastating, and she can join the ranks with perhaps President Trudeau as being kind of sort of symbolic of many of the things that should not be done.
Just to come back on that, as someone who, broadly speaking, supported lockdowns during the pandemic, because I thought that's what the science suggested was necessary, and that's what the NHS was calling for, and I was not a fan of Boris Johnson or his Tory government, I think we've got to be careful not to rewrite history. The reason that we went into lockdown in this country was to protect the NHS. Now, it's absolutely right that there should be a debate and possibly even some sort of inquiry into whether lockdowns here actually did more harm than good or did more good than harm. Open for that, because we were in a national crisis, we're in an international crisis, and so the decisions made under the white heat of that pressure should absolutely be scrutinised. Do we know that lockdowns didn't work? No, we don't. Do we need to do more to find out the answers to that? Absolutely, yes, we do. If we hadn't locked down when we did, and I think we should have locked down earlier the first time and the second time, if we hadn't locked down, many more people may have died. I mean, we need to find the answer to that.
Well, we know now. We know the answer. You have to look at Sweden. You have to look at Florida. You have to look at the outliers that kind of prove that. But
they don't prove it because they're different countries with different populations.
But you know what? I don't want us to go down that rabbit hole. But what I think is important in terms of Jacinda Ardern and how it might affect this country is that it feels like her population in that country, her electorate, are now. Basically, she's incredibly unpopular because of the decisions she made. That might prove to be the same here at the next election. Right, thanks, guys. After the break, remember the name Britishvolt. It was meant to be the heart of UK battery production for electric cars, but now it's gone into administration. Our main business guy, Liam Halligan, will give us the lowdown on why in just a moment. That's after your morning's news.
Good morning, it's 10:34. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The government's announced more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK through a levelling up fund. The Prime Minister's promised to deliver economic growth and new jobs. £19 million of the latest round of funding will be going to Rishi Sunak's own constituency. The Eden Project North in Morecambe will receive £50 million, as will Cardiff Crossrail. Labour's criticised the plan, saying London and South East England will be getting most of the money, but Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove says they're wrong.
The way in which the money is allocated is against objective criteria. So we set out our determination to make sure that people in those overlooked communities get support. Then the allocation is scrutinised by experts in government departments in order to make sure that it's rigorous. But as I say, you know, the biggest investment of all is in Morecambe and across Lancashire. We're seeing investment, including communities like Blackburn and Accrington that I mentioned, and that is a deliberate way in which this government is doing more to support these communities.
Health leaders are making contingency plans for what could be the biggest walkout in the history of the NHS next month. It was announced yesterday that ambulance workers will join nurses in a combined day of action for the first time ever on February the 6th. Nurses in England are today staging a second day of strike action, while more than 1,000 Unite members in the Welsh Ambulance Service are holding the first of two walkouts. And Jacinda Ardern is quitting as Prime Minister of New Zealand next month, saying she no longer has enough in the tank to lead the country. Miss Ardern admitted it had been a tough 5.5 years in the job. She'll step down as Labour Party leader by the 7th of February, with a vote to determine her replacement shortly after. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Bev will be back in just a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Very good morning, it's 10:38. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. OK, you've been getting in touch, thank you. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. On the continuous winter strikes, Brian says, a pay increase won't help ambulances being backed up at hospitals. The government was elected by the people, and what the unions are doing is totally undemocratic. That did occur to me, actually, when I was talking to Jason Killens before from the Welsh Ambulance Service. What he was describing wasn't necessarily about people's pay. Beverly has said, not me, the majority of nurses in the north are not striking today. We are not massively understaffed. Well, that is good news. And Catherine has said, where are the NHS managers? Surely they should be helping to sort out this situation. Very good point. Keep your emails coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, the Princess of Wales is expected to launch a national campaign later this month focused on her decade-long passion for early years development. Her Royal Highness believes the first 5 years of a child's life have a big impact on their future chances. And yesterday, Kate visited Fox Cubs Nursery in Luton, and our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, was there.
How can one small playdate have such a big impact on a child's future? The Princess of Wales believes it's those crucial early years that children learn how to interact with others.
These are vital skills that are going to take them into, the next stage of education and also into their later adult lives.
Her Royal Highness visited Fox Cubs Nursery in Luton yesterday, continuing a decade-long passion for supporting very young children. The Princess experienced how this nursery places a huge importance on learning through play, but also at the same time supporting parents to give the children here the best start in life. But it's not all fun and games. Nearly 5,500 early years providers have closed their doors in the last 12 months, according to the Early Years Alliance. The organisation's boss blames a lack of funding.
We've been through a pandemic where many children, frankly, were starved of play, were starved of sharing, etc. So it's not, sort of surprising that we have child development issues. To deprive children effectively of a good education, because this is what the early years is about. It's not just care, it's about educating children. We wouldn't accept that for a 5-year-old, we would not accept that for a 10-year-old. Somehow we'll accept it for the 3- and 4-year-old. So parents are struggling.
And it's not just the parents. Staff don't have to dig far to conclude some children have lost out by being stuck at home. Something Fox Cubs acting manager was keen to share with the Princess.
Things that came up in the conversation were about the impact of COVID and lockdown on children, and all the people that she spoke to pretty much said the same thing, the social and emotional side of things and the communication development, the delay that it's had on children.
The Princess of Wales launched the Royal Foundation for Early Childhood in 2021 and last year visited Denmark to see firsthand how they support the youngest members of society. Her Royal Highness is expected to launch a national campaign focused on early years development later this month. Cameron Walker, GB News, Luton.
Thank you, Cameron. Now, last year, the Blythe-based Britishvolt gigafactory was awarded £100 million to build an electric battery manufacturing plant. It was hailed at the time as breaking ground on the country's green industrial revolution. The factory now won't be built after the mother company went into administration on Tuesday. Let's get more from our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Good morning, Liam. What does this mean for the UK's green industrial revolution, and where's all that money gone?
Good to be with you here, Bev. I'm in Camis. I'm outside the famous Chalton's Cafe on Camis Beach. Camis is just a few miles north of Blythe, which itself is about 15 miles north of Newcastle here in the northeast. Camis is the site of that gigafactory, which, as you say, the future of it is in jeopardy. The company Britishvolt, a startup, it had plans to build a £3.6 billion plant, building batteries that go into electric vehicles, driving car making in this region, which is the biggest car making region of the UK, along with the Midlands. That company, Britishvolt, has now gone to administration because it couldn't raise the money it needed to unlock that £100 million of government money, which was contingent on the private sector money. This is a big blow for the region. To learn more about this, I'm joined by Paul Butler, who is the Chief Executive of the North East Automotive Alliance. Paul, you've been at the forefront of getting this gigafactory built. How disappointed are you at yesterday's news?
It's extremely disappointing for the region. Obviously, Britishvolt had very ambitious plans here to build the battery facility. It was an important landmark for the UK automotive sector. If we look at future demand of batteries, we probably require something in the region of 8 to 10 gigafactories in the UK to meet future demand. So Britishvolt was a key element of that. However, this site is an extremely good site to build batteries here because of the infrastructure that already exists. It's also the termination point for the link into Norway, and with the Dogger Bank offshore wind facilities going in, then that green energy is ideal to power a gigafactory of Britishvolt. So I'm fairly confident somebody else will come in and take over the facility.
Indeed, this cafe, the site that's just next to it, is right on the coast. You can see lots and lots of offshore windmills from here. That Dogger Bank site, as you're saying, being built by the British and Norwegian government. It's kind of the biggest offshore wind farm in the world in the middle of the North Sea. Blythe is the termination point of that power plant. That's why we want to build this gigafactory here. Do you think other private sector companies will come forward to fill the gap where Britishvolt failed, hopefully to then unlock that £100 million of government support?
Yes, I'm extremely hopeful that somebody will. We've certainly heard there are a number of companies who are interested in the site. And as I say, it is the #1 site in the UK to build a gigafactory because of the cost savings you would have as a result of the infrastructure that already exists here.
And of course, if we got this factory built, that would encourage more car making in this region, leading to thousands, tens of thousands of extra jobs.
Exactly, yeah. We're growing as a sector in the northeast. We've obviously got Nissan here on our doorstep, the most productive car plant in the UK.
Paul Butler of the North East Automotive Alliance, great to have you with us. Bev, all is not lost here by any means. The North East is positioning itself as the renewable energy capital, not just of Britain, but of Europe, given these offshore wind facilities. I'm going to be here reporting all day, talking to lots of people, talking to lots of local people, how they feel about it. But in my bones, I'm getting the sense, Bev, that despite this setback yesterday, this factory will be built.
Well, let's hope so. Thank you, Liam. Thank you very much. Now, my panel are still here, writer and broadcaster Matt Stadlen and founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. Right. Michael Gove was talking to GB News this morning, the Levelling Up Secretary, about the money that he is giving out all around the country to improve your quality of life. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
The way in which the money is allocated is against objective criteria. So we set out our determination to make sure that people in those overlooked communities get support. Then the allocation is scrutinised by experts in government departments in order to make sure that it's rigorous. But as I say, you know, the biggest investment of all is in Morecambe, and across Lancashire we're seeing investment, including in communities like Blackburn and Accrington that I mentioned, and that is a deliberate way in which this government is doing more to support these communities.
So, Alan Miller, you're looking through the list there of which areas are going to get what and how much. What jumps out? It's 18 pages of this. What jumps out at you?
Well, it's not just who gets what and where. There is a discrepancy, but there's a differential in terms of demographics and where people are. I think one of the most worrying things is, where is our robust research and development? Where is our commitment to dynamic transformation and infrastructure? We see a few things, a little bit of track here, a town hall there, but where is this ambitious transformation? I'm very concerned that there isn't enough of that. The other thing that's happening simultaneously with this levelling up conversation is you've got a situation where you've also got suffocations and limits. So you've got the Conservative government that are giving incentives to regions and towns and cities to have limits on cars, to have limits on movement, and to suffocate those things, they get financial incentives. That's not helping in terms of a dynamic economy. It's suffocating businesses and families. And I'm very concerned about the democratic implications of all of that as well, because often the public's consulted and they say they don't want it, and we're seeing businesses going out. So when we're talking about levelling up, we have to have an all-round 360 approach. Investment's important, but it's also the type of investment and infrastructure, house building. We have a huge deficit. We should be building up to 10 million new houses, right? They're just lacking and missing. And that's just not being done here.
It's not addressed in it, is it? I mean, we've got, let me give you an example. I don't know where you live at home, but I will, maybe I managed to, North East Lincolnshire Council, they're going to get 18 million for the transformational regeneration of Cleethorpes Seafront. I like Cleethorpes Seafront, Matt Stadlen. This includes rejuvenating the historic Market Square and the pier. That seems like a good idea. Like, I think there's a lot of this which does sound positive. I hate to say it, but I'm being quite positive about this. £20 million to remodel the Palace Theatre in Telford to deliver a rich cultural programme for local people, as well as improve the sixth form college. In Malvern, we've got an outdoor theatre and new studio space. We'll level up access to the arts. Some of this sounds great.
I think this is politically toxic for the Tories. This was Boris Johnson's flagship policy, wasn't it? He's gone. Sunak's here now after the Truss failure. Headlines such as levelling up cash favours South East over Red Wall. This is potentially electorally disastrous for the Conservatives. Yes, they've got to keep their South East supporters on side, but who can look at a headline like that and think that the country is genuinely levelling up? I mean, of the 80 successful bids in England for this cash, I think only half are in the 100 most deprived areas in the country.
Yeah.
So it just seems, on the face of it at least, I mean, Michael Gove's saying experts, we know what he thinks about experts, he's saying this has been judged by experts, but on the face of it, it looks like an absolute shambles.
Richmondshire District Council, Rishi Sunak's actual constituency in Yorkshire, they're going to get £19 million to transform Catterick Garrison Town Centre with new routes for walking and cycling. This is a theme throughout much of this.
I'm all for cycling and walking and getting people out active and in nature, like we were talking about earlier, when it comes to taking responsibility for our own health. But the fact that so much money is going to the Prime Minister's own constituency just seems to me politically insane.
Yeah, what do you think, Alan? Does it? You see, when you look at this, I mean, I know the headline is that it's going to the South East, but a lot of these, the projects, they look like the kind of thing that people... Is it just buying votes before the next election? If you say, oh, I've got a new swimming pool going up in my town. Oh, we have got a bit of regeneration on the high street.
Well, I think that it's important to invest in things, or reinvest, as you see a lot of those are there. But you'll see things like a new community hub around an old coal provision. And energy, for instance, is a huge thing. Where is our investment in tidal? We could be energy independent in 5 years. Where are the really robust job and wealth creation around nuclear? Of course we need town halls, community centres, creative spaces, But this is lacklustre.
It feels. I think what you're saying is it's not connected, is it? It's all a bit disconnected. But maybe that's what we need is more decentralised decision making for the people in those areas.
Well, here's the thing about all of that. I think we've got a problem with sovereignty and like having everyone engaged publicly. The idea that just locally, and this is the point about the devolutionary discussion with Keir Starmer, that just because you've got a mayor locally, you've got more democracy is not actually the case. I mean, we're seeing it with council leaders up and down the country and some mayors, for instance, with you, Les, in London, where the mayor's making a decision to ignore over 70% of respondents that saying they don't want it. Just because we live in London doesn't mean that he's got some of that devolved responsibility. We are any more democratic. So I think that needs to be understood. We need to get the public involved in a big plan that actually engages and inspires, allows zombie companies and banks to fail, gets wealth creation for everyone. Almost like you'd have the big, you know, if you think about the World's Fair, what could Britain be over the next 100 years? Let's have some ambition, get people engaged and win people over to that idea.
Right, next story. I bet you're a vegetarian, Matt Stadlen, aren't you?
I'm not, but funnily enough, I have been in my life.
I knew that. I knew you would have been.
I couldn't keep it up. I should have kept it up. I couldn't keep it up. I saw a pig being slaughtered when I was little in mid-Wales, and that put me off meat for 9 months.
Oh, I bet.
And then I saw fish dying on a Brittany beach on a holiday in northern France, and that made me vegetarian again for another 9 months, but I've been weak.
Well, Edinburgh, you said it. Edinburgh has become the first European capital to take meat off the menu in schools in a bid to reduce the city's carbon footprint. Alan Miller, I despair.
You know, the thing...
Everything in moderation, right? Everything in moderation.
I think the thing is, the thing that's so telling about this particular piece and what's happened is a council report said, overall, the science is clear. Where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
Meat and dairy consumption must reduce to achieve climate targets. So we've got this policy that's now to do with what children eat and don't eat, as well as what they're told in school and not so told. We've also got a kind of a secular religion somewhat, where it's all been proven.
For us,
The science, which isn't scientific inquiry, the science is out, it's done. And now what we're going to do is transform behaviour. Forget things like lack of standards, the fact that literacy and numeracy is a problem, that we have people that still can't even write essays when they get to university. People aren't reading books enough. We've got a whole array of things like that. But instead, the discussion around school is that we're going to get rid of meat consumption to achieve climate targets. I just think this science is all proven. We've just seen 3 years of that, and we need to encourage scientific inquiry and investigation, but schools should not be doing this, in my opinion.
Awful. I mean, the thing is, Matt, as well, even from a health point of view, goes back to what we were talking about earlier about taking responsibility for our health. Most of the those dietitians, nutritionists, doctors who are looking at diet now say lean protein is better for us. One of the reasons we have this health crisis is because there's so many of us eating nutritionally empty carbohydrates. What are they going to replace a sausage with? They're going to replace it with a bowl of pasta.
I'm not a dietitian, and as you can see, I'm probably carrying a little bit of excess weight, although I'm trying. No, I think that the climate crisis is real, and I think it is incredibly important that we address it sensibly and seriously. The science is clear. It doesn't mean that every scientist in the world thinks that there's a climate crisis, and it is important in science to have scepticism, and where there's dissent, it should be within reason listened to. But the overwhelming majority of scientists in the world subscribe to the idea that if we don't act and change our behaviour, that's not just in Edinburgh, it's around the world, then the world will become a much more dangerous and therefore expensive and difficult place for all of us to live in. Is taking meat off the menus in hospitals, nursing homes and schools in Edinburgh going to save the world? No, but if we don't start doing our bit, and to the credit of the government, it has been making some strides, then how can we possibly expect other countries, China and so forth, who aren't doing nearly enough, to do their bit?
We run out of time. Oh, I was going to get stuck into that like a nice big steak. But next, I'm going to be looking at what impact all of these strikes are having on our children. See you in a few minutes.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. It will turn a little milder as we go through the weekend, but it's cold out there again today. Many places dry and bright with sunny spells, but we will continue to see some snow in places. Seen some heavy snow, particularly in Manchester this morning, and some snow from this area of low pressure heading its way across northern Scotland. A mixture here at low levels of rain, sleet. It's over the hills where we'll continue to see some snowfall coming in, and a mixture of sleet and snow showers over northwest England, North Wales, and one or two moving into parts of the Midlands perhaps as well. But for many areas it is dry and bright with sunny spells, but it is rather chilly. Temperatures 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, maybe 6 or 7 across the southwest. Feeling colder with the winds across northern Scotland. Further sleet and snow showers coming in here overnight, and it could turn icy wherever we've had showers or wherever we've had the snow through this morning. So just bear that in mind overnight. Slippery conditions again for Friday morning, even though most places won't be seeing any more snow showers through the night. Could turn foggy, especially so in Northern Ireland. It'll certainly turn frosty yet again. So a cold start to Friday, but by and large, Friday is a dry, sunny day for the vast majority. Some stubborn fog patches for Northern Ireland. A few showers grazing easternmost parts of England and eastern Scotland. Again, will be a mixture of rain, sleet, snow and perhaps hail, but say most places just dry and sunny. Temperatures just a degree or so higher, closer to average with light winds in the sunny spells. Not feeling too bad, but again, temperatures will drop pretty sharply on Friday evening. If you're heading out, it's going to be a cold and frosty one, but signs of a change behind me. The cloud thickening, some wet weather moving in. That is a weather front that will slowly introduce milder air this weekend, and I do mean slowly. Still pretty cold for most, but gradually turning milder across the north with some rain in western Scotland. Goodbye.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Before midday, we'll be talking about the government's £2 billion of funding as part of its levelling up scheme. Will this improve your quality of life? Email me gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'm also going to be discussing kids' safety online and what more can be done to protect our children from harm with one very interesting woman. I'm going to be joined by a former Google employee who also runs a non-profit organisation dedicated to protecting kids from harmful online experiences. You don't want to miss her interview. I'll also be joined back in the studio by my panellists, Matt Stadlin and Alan Miller. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 11. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The government's announced more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK through a levelling up fund. The Prime Minister's promised to deliver economic growth and new jobs. £19 million of the latest round of funding will be going to Richmond and Yorkshire, Rishi Sunak's own constituency. The Eden Project North in Morecambe will receive £50 million, as will Cardiff Crossrail. Labour's criticised the plan, saying London and South East England will receive most of the money. But Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove says they're wrong.
The way in which the money is allocated is against objective criteria. So we set out our determination to make sure that people in those overlooked communities get support. Then the allocation is scrutinised by experts in government departments in order to make sure that it's rigorous. But as I say, you know, the biggest investment of all is in Morecambe and across Lancashire. We're seeing investment, including in communities like Blackburn and Accrington that I mentioned, and that is a deliberate way in which this government is doing more to support these communities.
Health leaders are making contingency plans for what could be the biggest walkout in the history of the NHS next month. It was announced yesterday that ambulance workers will join nurses in a combined day of action for the very first time on February the 6th. Nurses in England from 55 NHS trusts are today staging a second day of strike action, while more than 1,000 Unite members in the Welsh Ambulance Service are holding the first of two 24-hour walkouts. Ferry services between Dover and Calais have been suspended today due to a national strike in France. P&O Ferries says it's produced an optimised sailing schedule in light of the 24-hour walkout. The Port of Dover says it's still open with services to Dunkirk running as normal, but has advised travellers to allow extra time for journeys. Ferries to Calais are expected to resume at 2 this afternoon. The King has requested the profits from a £1 billion a year wind farm deal to be used for the wider public good, rather than the royal family. King Charles has asked for the profits from 6 new offshore wind farms being developed on Crown Estate land to be redirected to those struggling the most. It comes after His Majesty highlighted the anxiety and hardship of the cost of living crisis in his Christmas message. Jacinda Ardern is quitting as Prime Minister of New Zealand next month, saying she no longer has enough in the tank to lead the country. She'll step down as Labour Party leader by the 7th of February, with a vote to determine her replacement shortly after. New Zealand will hold a general election on the 14th of October. Ms Ardern admitted it had been a tough 5.5 years in the job.
This has been the most fulfilling 5.5 years of my life. But it has also had its challenges. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple.
A British actor has been reported missing after going hiking in mountains north of Los Angeles. Julian Sands disappeared in the San Gabriel Mountains last Friday during bad weather. Ground rescue teams abandoned their search at the weekend because of avalanche risks. Police say it'll resume as soon as conditions improve. The 65-year-old's known for roles in films A Room with a View and Leaving Las Vegas, as well as TV appearances on 24 and Smallville. Back here, universities have seen a 22% increase in antisemitism over the past 2 academic years. The Community Security Trust says it's received 150 reports of incidents affecting Jewish students, academics and university staff. That's up from 123 reported in the previous 2 academic years. It comes after an investigation last week revealed Jewish undergraduates face a hostile culture within the National Union of Students. And Manchester Airport has reopened after temporarily closing both runways due to heavy snow this morning. The Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings of snow and ice for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales as bitterly cold temperatures continue to grip the UK. Meanwhile, an ice warning is in place for South West England, with a major incident declared in Somerset due to the risk of flooding. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. It's back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Bev Turner today on GB News. Here's what's coming up this morning. The Prime Minister has announced that more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK through the Levelling Up Fund. Labour, meanwhile, have criticised Rishi Sunak for allocating more funds to the southeast of England than the northeast, with £19 million going to his own constituency. We're expecting to hear from Rishi this hour on this. And as the government's proposed legislation to keep children safe from harmful online content goes one step closer, should parents have more control over the content their kids see online? And of course, this show is nothing without you and your views. Don't forget to vote in my Twitter poll this morning. I'm asking you, as Michael Gove announces £2 billion for levelling up across the country, do you think it will improve your day-to-day quality of life? 90% of you so far say that it will not. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews to have your say. So, strikes. Members of the EIS union have resumed day 4 of 16 days of industrial action as they argue for better pay and work conditions as the teachers continue to negotiate with the Scottish Government. What about the mental health and the education of school kids? So joining me in the studio now is life coach, hypnotherapist, Lucia Mizzoni. Good morning, Lucia. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, when we talk about these strikes, we had an interesting, heartbreaking interview with a woman the other day whose husband died because her ambulance didn't turn up. And when I think we really can understand these strikes is when we think about the human consequences of them. And so it's not really about whether the strike is right or the strike is wrong. But what I'm interested in is the effects it might have on children who've already been through so much. What are your thoughts on that?
It's indisputable that the absence from school during the pandemic, there is lots of research that's been done by Gov.uk and Mind and different organisations that proves how the impact was detrimental, mentally, emotionally, from a learning point of view. And there are reasons for that. 90% of the children and the students interviewed stated themselves that they felt their mental health was seriously damaged, and the manifestation of that damage goes and manifests through anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies, thoughts. I see it in my own practice. So that's undisputable. The numbers are there. And for that very reason, to imagine a scenario in which children are not allowed to access face-to-face, one-to-one interaction with their teachers and be surrounded by their peers is certainly very unwelcomed. Psychologically, that is explained. There's something called human needs psychology that lists 6 fundamental human needs, and I can list them for you. And when I look at that, I see that 5 of those core needs have been greatly affected and unmet during the pandemic or any time that a child cannot access an institution like
also,
school.
Like if they've got strike days and they're having to be at home. So give us an idea. What are those?
Those needs are, first of all, the needs of certainty. Any human to thrive and become a functioning adult, a well-rounded adult, needs certainty. Certainty means predictability about the environment one is living in, predictability about the future, routine. Children and students need routine to thrive. Certainty is removed when the access to school is not offered to them. And how does lack of certainty then manifest in terms of psychological byproduct is either compulsive behavior, so the need to control, and OCD, eating disorders, or complete helplessness, apathy, and depression. And I see that in my practice, and all the research proves that. So that's one of the first unmet needs. Then there is also the need of uncertainty, excitement, so the stimuli of your environment, accessing your peers, adventure, that's also another core fundamental need. The third need, specifically important for that age group, pre-adolescents and adolescents, is the need to be validated by your peer group. So the importance of being able to interact with your friends. That's, the family becomes secondary and it's replaced by the peer groups that was taken away from them. And the consequence of that is a sense of isolation and disconnect, and therefore depression. And then you have the need to be connected. There's a real need to belong to the tribe. This is very primitive need. That's how we are wired. Your tribe becomes your outlet to protect yourself. And then these are called personality needs. And then there is more spiritual needs. One is the need to grow, which is obviously affected because there is no growth isolated at home, and the other is the need to contribute, the sixth need. And I think that's the one that hasn't been affected because I think the pandemic allowed everybody to reach out and feel connected to the rest of the world.
So if these children who've been through so much, this particular demographic, and I know you have 2 teenagers yourself, if we're now going to be telling them that the certainty of going to school is going again, what might parents see? What can we look out for in the behaviours of our children, and what can we do to help them?
We can see, and we will see if that happens for a prolonged period of time, different dysfunctional behaviours that could manifest through anxiety, so an increased need to control, fear, helplessness, depression, so a sense of isolation and disconnect. And there has been a significant increase in children lamenting these issues. I see it personally in my own practice, but obviously the numbers tell us. So look out for discomfort, distress, and anxiety, or maybe a child becoming more withdrawn and isolated, eating patterns changing, maybe use of technology. I know you're going to cover that later. Increase in the use of technology, so monitor how much access you give. It's a very complex and worrying issue.
Here's the thing. There will be some children, I think mine will probably be amongst them, who might go, oh, I really love a day off. Oh, Mummy, I can't think of anything better than sitting in my bedroom and playing on my screen all day. Is that also valid?
But that's to be expected. It's kind of age appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, my
quite
children.
Jealous, personally.
Yeah, exactly. And my children themselves didn't really get affected much during the pandemic because they had the luck maybe to have a healthy home environment. But that wasn't the case for many others, and more the underprivileged also groups. There was an enhancement of issues that were already present in the home. Yeah, one day it's very healthy to reset and reboot. We all need that. So that can be a nice break, a removal from the pressure and the routine, but one day, not, you know, a subsequent sets of day back to back for several weeks.
Yeah, and like you say, it comes down to that word uncertainty again. That's what I felt during the lockdowns, but also that is what the children are going to see with these teacher strikes. Am I going to go to school next week, Mum? When is the next strike? When is it going to come along? Will we be having strikes running up to the Easter holidays? I know this is a bit more of a political question in a way, but as a psychologist, does it disappoint you that all of this evidence is there now of how disrupted children are, and yet the teachers are doing this on the back of such an extraordinary period of time?
You know, Bev, I believe and I see in the resilience of the human mind, and, you know, we cannot change what has happened. We can never do that. But what the pandemic and potentially this new coming up disruption can offer is an opportunity for also children to go inwards and understand what is it that I can do in this situation, what meanings can I create out of this situation. Maybe I need to become more self-reliant and not constantly seek validation externally in the peer group. It's definitely an opportunity to reflect on what one can do more of, or the areas that have been brought to the surface, how can they be rectified. And in the case of children, obviously they depend on adults helping and facilitating that process for them.
I know this isn't exactly what I brought you here to talk about, because I know that this interest is about the psychology. Oh, we've got to move on. I think we're going to go and listen to Rishi Sunak. But thank you.
You're welcome,
Mazzoni. Now, the Prime Minister is in Lancashire this morning. He's been speaking in the past few moments about levelling up. Here he is.
You're making a mockery out of the entire levelling up process because you're giving more money to southern seats. What do you say to that?
Well, I'm here in Accrington in the northwest to see levelling up in action. Now, what's levelling up about? It's about investing in local communities so that we can create jobs, drive growth, and make sure that people feel enormous pride in the places that they call home. Today, we've announced new funding coming on top of what we've already announced, meaning that we've spent almost £4 billion in 200 different communities across the country, including dozens here in the northwest. People have talked about investing in places like this for years, but it's this government that's delivering it.
How can you justify spending £19 million in your own constituency on Catterick Garrison when other areas, partly Liverpool for example, aren't getting any money?
Well, actually, if you look at the overall funding in the Levelling Up funds that we've done, about 2/3 of all that funding has gone to the most deprived parts of our country. Now, with regard to Catterick Garrison, the thing that you need to know is that's home to our largest army base, and it's home to actually thousands of serving personnel who are often away from their own families serving our country. It's important that they have access to a town centre that's providing the amenities that they need. That's what that funding is going to deliver. I'm really grateful to all our armed forces personnel for the incredible job that they do, and I'm delighted that this investment will support them.
The majority of the funding is going to areas that have got Conservative MPs. Is this pork barrel politics?
Actually, 2/3 of all the Levelling Up funding is going to the most deprived parts of our country. I'm here in Accrington, I'm just off to Morecambe, I'm travelling across the north today, for example. What we're doing is investing in local communities across the country. Levelling Up is about making sure people feel pride in the places they call home. It's about driving jobs and investment. That's what we're doing, and I'm pleased that we can make these announcements today. And it's all part of our plan that I set out at the beginning of this year when I said to the country that we were going to focus on their priorities: halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists and stop the boats. That's what we're getting on and delivering.
More money going to London and the South East than the North. Is this because you think that you're hedging your electoral bets, that really you need to shore up the south of England and give up on the North?
We're investing hundreds of millions of pounds across the north in dozens of projects. I'm here talking to you from Accrington. I'm just off to Morecambe after this. Then I'm over to the northeast. And the thing you need to know, actually, if you look at the funding and you compare it to the number of people that live in each region, the region that has done the best in the amount of funding per person is the north. It's actually, that's where we are today. That's why we're here talking to you in Accrington Market. These are the places that are benefiting from the funding. We're delivering on what we said. We're investing in local communities. This is Levelling Up in action. Perfect. Thank you very much. Very nice to see you.
Sunak, we are asking you for your reaction on this Levelling Up fund on our Twitter poll. Do you think it is going to improve and increase your quality of life? Let me know at GBNews. There we go, there it is. We're asking you, as Michael Gove, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, announces £2 billion across the country, will it improve your quality of life? Let me know. Rishi Sunak was ever so excited about it. OK, now, at the moment, 90% of you say no, it won't do anything to help me. As always, send me an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. After the break, ITV boss Carolyn McCall says there is no place for Jeremy Clarkson's views on the channel. So is there any chance of redemption after apparently getting cancelled over his comments about Meghan Markle? My panellists will be in to debate that. But first, here's your weather.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest,
balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Bev Turner today on GB News. It's 11:22. My panel are back with me. I'm delighted to be joined by writer and broadcaster Matthew Stadlen and founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. Right, guys, I don't know whether you saw this story earlier in the week. Jeremy Clarkson writes this article for The Sun in which he talks about Meghan Markle deserving to be walked down the street and hit with excrement. How that got through the editor of The Sun, I do not know, without making it clear it was a scene from Game of Thrones. He's got this new series out of Clarkson's Farm, which starts in a couple of weeks. Brilliant TV. And the headline is that he's going to get ditched by Prime, Amazon Prime, isn't it, that show it? Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. And terrible, cancel culture, woke mania gone mad. Harry and Meghan said, we don't accept your apology. And were determined in the way that they do of trying to be kind to destroy his life. ITV now, Matt, have come out and made a statement and says there's no place on the channel for the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire host views about Meghan. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think it's fine to say there's no place on the channel for those views, for his employer or the person who the company that engages him, to make absolutely clear that they distance themselves from the hateful, misogynistic column that he wrote. He wrote the column, he has to take responsibility. Part of his mea culpa, by the way, that I saw yesterday, seemed to involve him saying that usually he reads his stuff to someone else in the house before he sends it. But on this fateful day, he said, there was no one around, so he just pressed send, which doesn't seem to me really to be owning up to it. Do I think he should be cancelled? Actually, no, I don't. Why don't I think he should be cancelled? He hasn't broken the law. Yeah, there have been huge numbers of complaints. Is it 25,000 complaints, I think, because of the column? I don't think he should lose his job, but I absolutely think it was right that he was apologised. And I'm pleased that we now live in a society where if you talk about whether it's linked to Game of Thrones or not, if you talk about the idea of a woman being paraded through the streets having excrement thrown at her, we now live in a society where you do have to apologise or you will lose your job.
Did you read the whole article?
Have I read the whole article? I read the relevant bits. I don't tend to read The Sun. Did I read the entire article? I don't think you need to read the entire article to know that when you talk about someone having excrement thrown at her in the streets, that's completely unacceptable.
I was determined to read the whole article before I took a call on this because The Sun took it down in the panic. And so I got one of the very clever minions in the office here yesterday to find it online. It is available. You have to look quite hard. It's hilarious, Alan Miller. It is classic Clarkson. It's like scatological, surreal, ridiculous. That's what he's famous for, this comedy writing where he reaches for extremes. And I think this is such a sad story that we're living in a world where no one can say anything funny.
Well, I think the thing is that Jeremy Clarkson's got a particular sense of humour, and for many, he is funny. He actually, in the past, has written things that, if you just take the actual words, are actually really horrific. He says things like, should prostitutes be shot? Should strikers be mowed down by, lorry strikers? But he's got that kind of grumpy old man and also kind of a particular kind of comedy. Now, I think we're seeing a number of things happen. In comedy, there's lots of people being cancelled saying you can't say that. What was most worrying about this whole thing for me was when I saw scores of MPs campaigning to have things never be allowed to be said, We've got an online safety bill that has been talking about, you know, taking away, like, farming out censorship to big tech with their terms and conditions. And we've got a kind of culture of you can't say that and I'm offended.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I didn't like what he wrote, but if I went round demanding
Have you read this whole article?
I have, yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
I don't particularly find him hilarious as it happens, right? But I get the
I've just got clearly gone very child sensitive.
My point is more that if I was to start insisting on all the things that upset, annoyed and incensed me, we'd have nothing left. And that's one of the problems that we've got now. We've got this idea that that people are getting offended by various things. Obviously, ITV can make their own decisions about who they commission and who they don't. He's obviously massively popular with the public. He's apologised for this. He's done that whole apology both to the individuals concerned and in the press, and his daughter was very upset with him and all of that.
Yeah.
Look,
Go on, Matt.
Clarkson is entertaining, but for the vast majority of the time, when he's not saying things that are beyond the pale, he is entertaining. He's a good watch, right? I think he is. And I obviously believe in press freedom and freedom of speech. But we also have to recognise that there are things that you shouldn't say. Not necessarily that you can't say, but that you shouldn't say. One of those is stuff that is hateful towards women. And
I'm all right with that. I'm a feminist.
But a lot of women are not, and a lot of men are not. You cannot, for example, you cannot incite hatred on racial grounds.
No.
Just an example, right? So the law already does step in. We don't have total freedom of speech. And this is somewhere in the sort of twilight zone where it's not unlawful, it's not illegal, it's not criminal, and therefore he should not lose his job. But it's absolutely right that he apologises, because you say, did I read the whole article? It wasn't available by the time I started thinking about it seriously. Or perhaps it was, but I saw enough of what he'd said to make a judgment on it. But if you talk about context, the context is that there is whatever you think about Harry and the revelations in his book, and I've got mixed views on that, the context is a tsunami of hate towards Meghan. And Harry. But Meghan is not perfect. But she has received horrible abuse. And this is a man with a column in a national newspaper who has a responsibility not to fan those flames of hatred.
I think it's really important that, you know, people often say, I'm all for free speech, and then there comes that magic word, but. And we see it consistently. And hate is a word that's used increasingly for all sorts of things. Hateful speech can be that you actually think that defining someone by their biology is a thing. It can be that you think that borders are important. It can be dressed up as being racist or presented in a load of different terms.
I think throwing excrement at a woman constitutes hate.
You have to contextualise it. Otherwise, you say Shakespeare.
But it wasn't contextualised.
Hold on. You didn't read the whole thing. If you take Shakespeare,
Game of Thrones, did he, Alan? He didn't mention Game of Thrones.
Shakespeare and take out a couple of items, and in many of the plays, they are barbaric, right? Where people are eating children or people that have done things to them. You've got a situation where if you were to take those things out of context, you could say that should be banned. Like conversations about a range of things, from Wagner to all sorts of things. These discussions are happening now across society, that it's hateful, we mustn't, it's beyond the pale. And when you say you shouldn't do it, right, fine, that's your opinion. But when we get into a situation where MPs and others are calling for people not to be allowed to speak, to lose their positions, I'm very concerned.
I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that Jeremy Clarkson's piece meets the bar of criminality. I'm not saying that what he said should be against the law. I don't think he was literally encouraging people to throw excrement at Meghan. Had he been doing that, perhaps it would have fallen foul of the law. The Sun has deleted the article, and the Sun has deleted the article for a reason. And it believes, or at least at the very least, it's been pressured into believing by a significant amount of public opinion that you don't write such hateful pieces about a woman. You just don't. It doesn't mean it's criminal.
Is it okay to write it about a man?
No.
But you see, the thing is, if you read that actual context, the joke is on him, because he's talking about lying in bed at night, gnashing his teeth and imagining a day when she might walk down the street to be pelted with excrement, just like he doesn't say, like the scene in Game of Thrones. And I think that's where this whole thing would not have happened if the editor had just contextualised it.
I'm not so sure, because, as I said, the wider context is this enormous hate, this disproportionate, well, hate is never really proportionate, but this hate directed towards Meghan.
But she wants him to lose his job.
It's an imaginary...
He hasn't called for her to be banned. He took the mickey out of her.
He's called for her to be paraded around the streets.
Well, he hasn't.
That's what he said he didn't.
What he's actually saying is he's imagining a dream.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing is that he's not gone and said people should go and do this. And I also think it's really insulting to the public, because within all of this, the whole idea is then that... I know you're not saying this, but this is the whole strand of hate and everything, that we've got all these terrible people in society, not our colleagues and our loved ones and our friends and family, that are right at the precipice and they're just about to go and do terrible things. Go and do these things to women, to other people. And actually, that's just not the case, right? So the idea that you say something that is imaginary, that he's doing, I didn't think it was particularly funny, and that's hateful, and then therefore it shouldn't happen, right? It's the whole direction we're going in is speech codes limiting people, second-guessing, and now people are often scared to say certain things.
If I'm in the company of an absolute misogynist, I want to know. I want him to feel like he can say the things that might upset me. This idea of silencing everybody, censoring everybody, they can't tell the truth. They can't sound like Meghan. They can't tell their truth. You know, they can't speak honestly or write in a national newspaper. I find really chilling.
Do we not think that you have a responsibility if you have a column in a national newspaper, or if you have a show on a national TV station, if you have a show on GB News, with the privilege of hosting a show that you have and that we both had formerly at LBC, comes responsibility.
Absolutely, and we operate within those guidelines.
I'll give you an example, OK? This morning, I tweeted to say that when there are serious economic challenges and times are very tough, and times right now for millions of people in this country are really very tough, people are struggling to make ends meet, hence the strikes, malign governments and or dictatorships scapegoat minorities and immigrants. And I said that the Nazis did it to the Jews, and Rishi Sunak's government is doing it to Albanians. Now, I wasn't for a second suggesting that Rishi Sunak's government is about to implement a Holocaust. What I was trying to say is it was an extreme thing that the Nazis did in the early 1930s when they blamed the Jews for the economic crisis. We don't want to go anywhere near that as a country. A lot of people, let me finish, a lot of people got offended because you should never, in my view, compare things to the Holocaust, which I wasn't. My grandparents were forced from their homes by the Nazis. My great-great-uncle died at the hands of the Gestapo. I know of which I speak. But I deleted the tweet because some people, Jews I think amongst them, found it offensive. And I feel I have a responsibility not unnecessarily to offend people.
Yeah, so, OK, so I think that we've seen the last 3 years speech being silenced, you can't say that, you shouldn't do it, you have a responsibility to say only certain things and others can't. In order to really get to things and clarify them and resolve questions around migration, borders, race and all of that, we need to have wide open debate and win people over to better ideas.
And that's what we do right here on GB News, but we're going to carry on our debate after your morning news with Rhiannon.
Bev, thank you. It's 11:34. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. The government's announced more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK through a levelling up fund. The Prime Minister has defended the £19 million of funding going to his constituency of Richmond in Yorkshire. The Eden Project North in Morecambe will receive £50 million, as will Cardiff Crossrail. Labour's criticised the plan, saying London and South East England will be getting most of the money, but Rishi Sunak's promised to deliver economic growth and new jobs.
In local communities so that we can create jobs, drive growth and make sure that people feel enormous pride in the places that they call home. Today we've announced new funding coming on top of what we've already announced, meaning that we've spent almost £4 billion in 200 different communities across the country, including dozens here in the northwest. People have talked about investing in places like this for years, but it's this government that's delivering it.
Health leaders are making contingency plans for what could be the biggest walkout in the history of the NHS next month. It was announced yesterday that ambulance workers will join nurses in a combined day of action for the first time ever on February the 6th. Nurses in England are today staging a second day of strike action, while more than 1,000 Unite members in the Welsh Ambulance Service are holding the first of two walkouts. And Jacinda Ardern is quitting as Prime Minister of New Zealand next month, saying she no longer has enough in the tank to lead the country. Ms Ardern admitted it had been a tough 5.5 years in the job. She'll step down as Labour Party leader by the 7th of February, with a vote to determine her replacement shortly after. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere, Bev will be back in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Very good morning, it's 11:38. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you for joining me. You've been getting in touch, thank you. Remember, gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. Anna has said every single year it seems the NHS is on the brink of disaster, yet every year it's a shock to a service with more managers and planners than any other. Nigel has said yesterday, my neighbour who worked as a nurse for over 30 years said it was not unusual for her to work 60 hours a week, and she would never have dreamed of going on strike. Times change, I guess. And Trevor got in touch to say every single year it seems the NHS is on the brink of disaster. I think we've just read that one. Keep your emails coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And I've also got a Twitter poll running asking you whether you think that Michael Gove and Rishi Sunak, their levelling up fund of £2 billion is going to improve your quality of life. Keep your tweets coming in on that. OK, a new survey has revealed that parents are losing control over what their kids are seeing and doing online. A YouGov poll commissioned by Tech Off reveals that the vast majority of parents aren't fully confident that they've set adequate controls on their children's devices. So joining me now in the studio is Miranda Wilson, a former Google employee and now founder of Tech Off. What is Tech Off, Miranda?
So it's basically an information site which has gathered together all the negative information around what's going on with our children and technology, and has also started to provide some of the solutions. So the solutions are short-form video showing parents how to, very clear, simple, short videos that show parents how to start putting in controls on their children's iPhones, Android phones, iPads, etc.
Brilliant. because it is the bane of every parent, and actually a lot of grandparents' lives as well, when they're looking after the children. It feels like tech just suddenly kind of sprung upon us in the most unregulated and life-changing way. And we parents are always a few steps behind, aren't we? Is that what you hear from parents?
Yes, absolutely. I have very similar conversations with friends who are parents who talk about losing control, talk about their children being addicted. And this is what, I mean, and I saw what was going on with my kids, who thankfully aren't too, they're not extreme in their behaviour around tech, but I've seen changes. So what led me to set up this organisation was, looking around me, seeing what was going on with kids. I started looking at, it was around the time of, we were talking about rape culture in schools. Rape culture in schools. I mean, really?
Yeah.
And then I was reading about the effect on, children's academic performance, their mental health, their physical health. I was also looking at what Silicon Valley parents are doing, which is clearly very different in terms of them just not even allowing their kids anywhere near tech. So the people who are creating these tools aren't letting their own children go on them.
Just reiterate that again, Miranda, for our listeners and our viewers, what you just said then.
So so parents who live and work in Silicon Valley, so where a lot of the tech giants are based, are sending their children to Steiner schools, and they are not letting their children anywhere near tech. So even to the point of getting their nannies to sign agreements to say, I will not allow your child to even see a screen while I'm looking after them.
Why are they doing that?
I think they know how addictive they are. I think they know how they can affect a child's concentration span. I think they probably know how difficult it is. Even if the parents are incredibly savvy, I think they probably understand once their children get to a certain age that they can get around the controls. I mean, this is a huge part of the problem. If all these parents, are confused about setting controls, and a large proportion also haven't even set any controls. I think it was 11%. That's a lot of kids out there who are seeing all the wrong things and having far too much time potentially online.
Whose responsibility is it, do you think? Is it the phone manufacturer? Is it the search engines? Is it the parent?
I think we all need to take responsibility here. The phone manufacturers haven't. I mean, I'd love to see a world where a health warning is slapped on a phone. So you open the box and it says, is this phone for a child? You better know about all these things, and maybe here's a source of information to help you there. And then that isn't happening. Obviously, legislation moves very slowly. So I think the only thing that we can do right now is for parents to really get more savvy around controls, but also be incredibly vigilant, because you can set controls and kids are sneaky, they will get around them, especially older kids. So then that's where vigilance comes in, and obviously conversations. And I'd also, I don't know about you, but I wish I hadn't bought my kids phones until they were 16,
I tried that with my eldest, and I gave him a Nokia brick when he first started at high school, and then I went on the journey to school with him a couple of times because it was a couple of train journeys, and I sat there embarrassing him but a few seats away, and I watched. All the children had smartphones and he couldn't play with them, and they were playing games and they were comparing videos and looking at stuff, and I just looked and I thought, he is isolated from the cohort because he hasn't got a smartphone.
Yeah.
And then eventually I had to give him one.
Yeah.
Do I regret it? Possibly. My second two have extremely detailed apps. They have Custodio on their phone. Me and my partner can monitor it. We can switch it on, we can switch it off, we can see exactly what they've Googled. And it means that when you're saying to your child, you've got to put that phone down, you're not actually fighting to get it out of their hand. You have the power in your phone just to click it off.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing on your website that you're recommending?
So what we're recommending at the moment, because we've just launched, is in-device controls, and then the next stage is to start reviewing all these third-party the likes of Custodio and seeing which ones actually work, because I did start doing some research into that, and unfortunately there is a wealth of information out there for kids who want to get around also the likes of Custodio and Net Nanny. So they're on YouTube. I've looked at them. There's kids making videos for other kids about how you get
how you can circumvent the security. I had a conversation with my 19-year-old though the other day, who, when I was despairing at my daughter, and he said, "Mum, you've just got to let her self-regulate. You've got to stop it. You're taking it away from her, and she's not learning to self-regulate." Does he have a point?
I don't know that it's fair to expect children to self-regulate when these devices are intended to be addictive. That's how they've been designed, or rather the platforms, But actually, just the screen itself is dopamine triggering, which is why, young children are also so susceptible to them. So, self-regulation, I don't know. Maybe with some children it works, maybe with others it doesn't. It depends on the nature of the child, the nature of their home environment, what else they've got going on. Are they allowed in their bedroom for hours on end, or are they out playing sport?
But there is no doubt that it is the bane of most parents. What was the statistic in your survey, the parents who find it problematic? It's about 80%, wasn't it?
80% are worried that their children are addicted. Yeah. And I think around 80% think that it interferes with family life.
OK, thanks so much. Miranda Wilson there. Thank you for joining me in the studio. Now, back to the news that is dominating the headlines today. The NHS could be facing the worst day of strike action in its history, with ambulance and nursing staff staging joint walkouts next month. Our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, joined the nurses' picket line in Derby yesterday and has the story.
Under the watchful eye of history's most famous health worker, Florence Nightingale, the nurses of the present fight for the future of their profession. Ellie has joined the picket here in Derby. She works in the community.
Me personally, I can't do the kind of nursing that I want to do, the kind of nursing that I trained to do, and the reason that I came to the job. You're rushing around, you finish work at the end of the day feeling like you haven't done a good job for your patients. When it's right, it's the most rewarding job in the world, and that's why we do it, and that's why we're here fighting for a better profession, for people to want to do the job, so there's enough of us to provide really good care.
There are picket lines like this one in Derby across the country, and it doesn't really matter where you go because you'll hear the same answers from the nurses, that this strike is about pay and working conditions, because it seems that you can't improve one without doing something about the other.
Sam has worked in the NHS for 13 years. He may be outnumbered by his female colleagues, but he's facing the same financial challenges.
Everything's going up. We're now having to look more and more into our bank accounts. I'm having to, the week before payday comes along, I'm having to budget that a lot more.
In the last independent pay review, NHS workers were given on average a 4% pay rise. Amidst high inflation, the Royal College of Nursing says that's not enough. Sandy is from the union. She says they won't back down until the government negotiates on pay.
We don't want to end it without negotiations, and we will continue. Our mandate is until the end of May for us to be able to strike, and as it stands at the moment, we would go back out to ballot our members at the end of May to see if they wanted to continue striking if nothing's been brought to the table.
Nurses have agreed exemptions, like covering chemotherapy and dialysis, but the strikes are hurting an already troubled health service. Newly announced action by NHS colleagues in the ambulance service will fall on the same day in February as nursing strikes. The challenges for both the NHS and the government are great. Health Secretary Steve Barclay.
Well, I want to work constructively with the trade unions in terms of the pay review body process. Those are the discussions we have. That is a constructive way that I and other ministers are engaging with our respective trade unions. But ultimately, we need to act in the interests of the patient.
Frozen in place, it appears that this dispute will outlast winter. Will Hollis for GB News in Derby.
We don't have freedom of speech.
We found
right.
something we disagree on.
Alan Miller and Matt Stadler are here, chatting. Right, what we're going to talk about now, guys. Cake in the office apparently should be viewed like passive smoking. So this is Professor Susan Jebb of the Food Standards Agency. I think it's been taken slightly out of context. She was talking in a kind of personal capacity, she said, not on behalf of the FSA. And she said, if nobody brought cakes into the office, I wouldn't eat cakes in the day. But because people do bring cakes in, I eat them. Now, OK, I've made a choice, but people are making a choice to go into a smoky pub. People were making a choice. Oh, Matt Stadler, I don't want to live in this world, this funless, joyless existence where you can't take a cake into the office, do you?
Unfortunately, we still can take cakes into the office. I understand an element of the logic here, because she's saying, look, effectively, you don't have to eat a piece of cake if it's brought in, but it is nonetheless influencing you to eat cake if someone does bring it in. I think it's overstretching things a bit, and I think it's different to smoking in pubs because there's such a thing as passive smoking. There isn't such a thing as passive cake eating. Last time I checked. But no, I think that when it comes to advertising, and she touches on advertising as well, watershed for junk food and stuff, that probably can't come close enough, because even though we have free choice, We are all capable of being influenced. Why are you hosting a show on GB News? Because you hope, in part, to influence people as to your worldview.
It's really fun hosting a show on GB News. It's a huge privilege to do this every day, Alan Miller. But listen, if we live in a world where we can't take... Because there will be some people who've taken this headline and have sort of gone, oh, we must ban cake in the office. But it does tie into what I was saying earlier about the fact that we do all need to take more responsibility for our health. And the metabolic crisis that we're in is what is crippling our NHS.
So we might have something here that we disagree with. Not so much... and it's about personal responsibility and judgment. And I think that when we say people should and we should or we must... it kind of abdicates that idea of their personal responsibility. I've been very concerned about nudge before COVID, and it was primarily around key areas, and food was a big one of them. And actually, it was interesting, during COVID, no one wanted to talk about obesity, but prior to that, there was a whole series of campaigns.
Boris Johnson did.
They often became about intervening with the families and decisions and quite controlling. And when I see something like this, I think that it's in every arena, this notion that we've got to have limits, restrictions, cut back. You can't have that joy and fun. And there's that trajectory. It might be about the amount of alcoholic units. It might be about the kind of amount of sugar or salt and everything. And we've got questions about health, right? Physical work, exercise, all of those kind of things. But I really strongly believe these should be about personal decisions rather than this impulse to kind of restrict and ban. And just to say, even more controversially, the epidemiological evidence on secondhand smoking and passive smoking was not conclusive. In New York, they banned smoking in parks now, where there's no possibility of secondhand smoking. So you get to see that it's a kind of discussion about public health telling you what you must and should do.
OK, but if we are... the thing is, I know what you're saying, Alan, about personal responsibility, but then we aren't taking personal responsibility, are we? And I guess this is what Susan Jebb is saying. When fattening food is everywhere, when low nutrition, high... I mean, it's all delicious, don't get me wrong, that's the problem. I love good food, I love good booze. You know, I always want to have more of everything, but somehow we have to help people, do we, Matt, to not be making unhealthy choices all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it might surprise Alan, but broadly speaking, I'm not a big statist. I want there to be a welfare state. I want people to be able to survive if they're unfortunate enough to be unemployed. I want children to be able to be fed if their parents are unemployed and so forth. So I think we need to have a safety net. But we also want to live in a reasonably, and where the line is drawn is a question for debate, regulated society, where, for example, you don't advertise cigarettes to 14-year-olds, because that is obviously dangerous. Even though 14-year-olds have freedom of choice, that's dangerous. So, for example, coming back very briefly to what we were talking about before the break, and Alan and I were debating it quite heatedly, yes, we want, broadly speaking, to have freedom of speech, but we don't want people to go on national TV shows and spout racism, because that influences people.
Well, so nobody's allowed to do that, so the law works.
Exactly, so it is all about where you draw the line, and I think it is important we catch up on junk food. We do want to have a watershed for junk food because children are impressionable.
Right, this is a story which on the surface is hilarious, but I think it taps into a much deeper nightmare scenario. Siri, you know the thing you talk to, and this was a gym, a sparring guy, and a guy was sparring in a gym in Australia, and he said 1, 1, 2, nice shot. Next thing, 15 officers, including undercovers, showed up with several ambulances parked out the front. They said they'd had a report that somebody had rung 112 and reported shots fired. Alan.
Yes.
We love a bit of tech. I don't want to sound like a Luddite. I sound like a Luddite regularly. But doesn't this show how it doesn't always get it right, and we have to be mindful of that?
Well, I think we have to be very mindful of tech. We have to think about our rights and privacy and surveillance. I love tech. I think that wearable technology, particularly for people that are older and isolated, can be used by networks and groups and families to do things like open doors. People talk a lot about the Internet of Things. So I like the technology, but technology is not in and of itself doing particular things. That's what humans do. And I'm very concerned with the trajectory of surveillance, restrictions, and using technology in a particular way. So this gives light to some of those concerns. But if we think about all the biometrics, facial stuff that's going on now, the discussion about digital IDs increasingly across the European Union now and in the UK, And the whole idea of everything from 15-minute cities to whether you're eating too many cakes or recycling things and
It starts to
restrictions.
build a picture, doesn't it?
And CBDCs.
Yeah.
I think then I begin to get very concerned about those things.
OK, I can't get a response from you, Matt, on that, I'm afraid, because we've packed so much in this morning.
My Apple Watch.
How many steps have you done? Right, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove, announced a £2 billion fund this morning to go across the country, and I asked you whether you thought this would improve your quality of life. Well, 90% of you say no. That's a bit bleak, isn't it? Well, we've come to the end of our show this week. Coming up next is GB News Live with Mark Longhurst. I'm Bev Turner. I'll see you on Monday. Have a lovely weekend.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. It will turn a little milder as we go through the weekend, but it's cold out there again today. Many places dry and bright with sunny spells, but we will continue to see some snow in places. Seen some heavy snow, particularly in Manchester this morning, and some snow from this area of low pressure heading its way across northern Scotland. A mixture here at low levels of rain, sleet. It's over the hills where we'll continue to see some snowfall coming in, and a mixture of sleet and snow showers over northwest England, North Wales, and one or two moving into parts of the Midlands perhaps as well. But for many areas, it is dry and bright with sunny spells, but it is rather chilly. Temperatures 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, maybe 6 or 7 across the southwest. Feeling colder with the winds across northern Scotland. Further sleet and snow showers coming in here overnight, and it could turn icy wherever we've had showers or wherever we've had the snow through this morning. So just bear that in mind overnight. Slippery conditions again for Friday morning, even though most places won't be seeing any more snow showers through the night. Could turn foggy, especially so in Northern Ireland. It'll certainly turn frosty yet again. So a cold start to Friday, but by and large, Friday is a dry, sunny day for the vast majority. Some stubborn fog patches for Northern Ireland. A few showers grazing easternmost parts of England and eastern Scotland. Again, will be a mixture of rain, sleet, snow and perhaps hail, but say most places just dry and sunny. Temperatures just a degree or so higher, closer to average with light winds in the sunny spells. Not feeling too bad, but again, temperatures will drop pretty sharply on Friday evening. If you're heading out, it's going to be a cold and frosty one, but signs of a change behind me. The cloud thickening, some wet weather moving in. That is a weather front that will slowly introduce milder air this weekend, and I do mean slowly. Still pretty cold for most, but gradually turning milder across the north with some rain in western Scotland. Goodbye.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament.
But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday